What color temperature should I use in my home? This is probably the most common question I get is, what CCT should I use? What color temperature should I use? Warm white, cool white, what's the best choice? What if I told you there are no rules? Asking me what color temperature you should use is like asking someone what color paint you should use. There are some choices that are more common and some choices that are less common, but there's no right or wrong answer. It's your home, it's your rules. That said, I can draw on some of the experience that I have working with some of New York City's best lighting designers on everything from commercial interior spaces all the way to some of the finest homes in New York City. And I can give you some recommendations on what color temperatures will work in your home and why. But before we get into what color temperatures to use, do we even know what color temperature is? Okay, so what even is color temperature? Let's check it out. Color temperature is essentially defined as this theoretical scale. So this is called the black body curve. And the idea is that if you took a theoretical black object and put it under heat, think about like a piece of steel, and exposed it to extreme temperatures, what you would find is that it would glow at certain colors. And that color is referred to as the temperature at which the heat would be, right? Thinking about it, it's pretty simple. So in this case, what we're talking about is moving from 1500 Kelvin, right, all the way up to 10,000 Kelvin. So imagine something that's blue hot, right? It's so hot that it's actually at that 10,000 degree color temperature, right? This curve is called the black body curve, and this is where you get the color temperatures that show up on like the boxes for light bulbs and different light sources. Most common light sources today run in 2700K, sitting somewhere between these two, 3000, 3500K, 4000, 5000, every now and then you'll see 6000 commercially available, and we usually don't get much cooler than that. Incandescent light bulbs sit at right about here at 2800 Kelvin for incandescent and halogen, with a minor variation. When we're talking about residential interiors, generally we lend ourselves toward that model, right? That 2700K, to mimic incandescent light. That's the idea. But that said, every one of these little hash marks you see here are meant to show you the variation in various color temperatures, right? So what you'll find on the market, and this is one of the frustrations I think people have with color temperature in this conversation, is you'll get a 2500 Kelvin that trends more to the orange or toward the pink. A 3000 Kelvin that's more yellow-green or more pink-red, right? It's still 3000 Kelvin. A spectrometer would tell you it's 3000 Kelvin, but our eyes will see that different perception, that different variation. So it's interesting that we get so hung up on color temperature when there can be so much variation between two light sources. All that said, most of the commercial sources you see, most of the stuff you're going to find in the big box store or at your local lighting retailer is going to live between 2700, 3000, 3500, or 4000 Kelvin. For residential applications, it's generally recommended you live at that 2700K range. But we're going to talk about in a little while is why that's not necessarily the best color temperature for everybody. So now that you have a primer on what color temperature is, the question is, why is this a design choice? Well, back when it was just incandescent and halogen, really we didn't have any choices when it came to color temperature. It was all burning at 2800 Kelvin plus or minus a little bit. That gave us a baseline interior color temperature, especially for residential applications. You kind of knew what the color temperature was going to be because there was only one primary light source. Introducing new light sources like linear fluorescent and compact fluorescent gave us a variation in color temperature, but that didn't penetrate the residential market too deeply until CFLs. Now, in the world of LED, we're given much more choice when it comes to color temperature. 2700K, 3000, 3500, 4000, 5000 Kelvin are all specifiable options. In the big box market and the retail market, you're likely to see things that are called warm white or soft white, or things that are called like cool white or bright white. Those are meant to describe 2700K is that warm or soft, depending on what language they use. 5000 Kelvin is usually what's used to describe cool white or day bright or something like that. So they've kind of eliminated a bunch of options to try and make it easier for consumers to pick out what they like. That said, there's a lot of subtle differences with these color temperatures. Like I said at the beginning, There are no rules when it comes to color temperature. That said, I can tell you what certain color temperatures are going to do in terms of effect, and then you can decide what you want to use in your home. The first thing to understand about color temperature is that we experience lots of color temperatures throughout the day. I'm standing outside on an overcast day. This is probably going to read somewhere like 5,000, 6,000 Kelvin in terms of color temperature. Bright midday sun gets as cold as 10,000 Kelvin, right? So that real bright blue daylight, this is totally normal. We're totally used to it. We actually really like it. From an evolutionary standpoint, we have enough evidence to kind of give us a sense for the evolutionary biology on this. We would wake up triggered by warm sunlight, right? That warm sunrise. We would go to bed triggered by a warm sunset. Midday, bright, cool, white light, right? That variation throughout the day is extremely normal. It's what we grew up with. It's what we evolved into. That's probably why when we come interior, we go from the outside to the inside, we are drawn to the sense that things get warmer, right? Whether that's a derivative of firelight or a derivative of candlelight, I'm not sure, and I don't have firm scientific evidence, but it seems to be the case that people like to move from cool, bright exteriors to warm, comforting interiors. We also know that red light does not have a negative effect on your circadian rhythms. So warmer CCTs that have more red in them might be more beneficial to sleep, although that's a subject for a totally different video. What I can tell you is that for the average person on the average day, moving from a cool exterior light like this to warm interior light, most people will find that comforting. And that tends to be how you can create a cozy interior space that people feel invited into. There's other things that go into that, like where the light's coming from and brightness and all kinds of other things. But when it comes to color temperature, generally shifting warmer feels cozier and more inviting versus cooler, which can feel harsh like daylight. That said, there are no rules about this, and the reason I say that is that some people perceive color temperature differently. If you're anything like me, you scroll around YouTube quite a bit for lighting information, and one of the things that I find is that a lot of people prefer cooler color temperatures. So what's going on there, right? If I just said that warmer CCTs are more cozier, more inviting, most people prefer them, why do some people really like cooler temperatures inside? There could be a couple of things going on here, but one thing to understand is everybody sees color differently, and everybody sees light differently. Many people have macular degeneration, and some people have yellowing of the cornea, especially as we get older. It's very normal for our corneas to yellow, which means that cooler color temperatures, cooler light, is actually perceived closer to a sort of natural warm tone as it is for everybody else. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that if you have a yellowing of the cornea, a 5,000 Kelvin source is going to read as sort of a crisper white to you, whereas it might read as a harsher blue to people with younger eyes or people that don't have yellowing of the cornea. So if you are designing your lighting for your home and you feel better under cooler color temperatures, I and no one else should be there to stop you. That said, I can tell you that for most people, most of the time, warmer color temperatures, 3,000 and 2,700 K, are going to be more inviting. Before you commit to any color temperature, there are 4 things you should remember. First of all, your eyes are going to set what I would call a white balance for whatever the primary light source is in the room. So that means that your new white is going to be whatever the baseline white temperature is. So conflicting whites are going to be very confusing for our eyes, and it's going to be difficult to get comfortable in any of those settings. So if you've got a dining room adjacent to a kitchen, and your kitchen is lit in 5,000 Kelvin, but your dining room is lit with incandescent light bulbs, that's going to be a very jarring shift, right? Because you're going from a sort of warmer, more inviting tone in the dining room to a jarring, colder tone. So being consistent about your color temperatures throughout your home is going to be more pleasant. Number 2, if you want to assess finishes, consistency is key. So if you're trying to decide what paint color you're going to use or what fabric your couch should be, consistency about your color temperature is going to go a long way to making you feel better about your choices. Because if you shift that CCT around that material, it's going to color shift on you. You're going to experience it differently. Number 3, if your home has a lot of access to natural light, you're already getting a lot of cooler, bright white during the day. That's where I say that shifting to warmer color temperatures in the evening when that electric light is going to be more important is probably going to be a more inviting tone. It does invite us to shift into evening mode. It gently gets us into the day when we're starting our day. And number 4, many people over the age of 60 will have yellowing of the cornea. They might enjoy cooler color temperatures. So if you're designing a home or designing lighting for older relatives, parents or grandparents, and you know that they're having some yellowing of the cornea or macular degeneration, cooler light tends to be more comforting to folks in that spectrum. Just something to keep in mind. The key thing is consistency. Once you've gone with a color temperature that you enjoy, employing it throughout the home is one of the best ways to enjoy the home and make sure that you're having a consistent lighting experience from space to space. Now, all that said, what if I told you you don't have to commit to a single color temperature? LED gives us new options. We're going to talk about those right now. Remember how I said in the beginning that LED afforded us all kinds of new color temperature choices? Well, one of those choices is kind of no choice at all. LED is the first light source that offers us dynamic color changing light sources. What does that mean? Well, when it comes to white light, that kind of falls in 2 buckets. LEDs that warm dim and LEDs that are tunable white. Okay, so what do those 2 things mean? Warm dimming means that these LEDs, as you lower their intensity, as you make them dimmer, they will shift warmer, which is what we are experienced with incandescent and halogen light sources. That warm dim has been a key spec for things like restaurants and hotels and places where hospitality, where people want to feel warm and cozy and invited. What we see is bright white throughout the day, and then in the evening when light levels come down, they also shift warmer. This has been very popular in specification grade lighting. Unfortunately, there aren't as many light bulb choices that do this warm dimming technology, which is unfortunate because I think it would actually be very, very popular in the market. So if anybody in the industry is watching, offer those up. The other option, which is becoming pretty common in more of the smart lighting category, are tunable white light sources. So tunable white is designed so that you can actually dial in different tones of white as you see fit, independent of their brightness. So there are several manufacturers on the market that offer this. These days, they're usually tied back to apps, right? So you're using a phone app to dial in that color temperature. And what it can do is shift the color from cool white to warm white through 5000 K down to as low as 2000 Kelvin. What's cool about that is you can do certain things that other light sources can't do. So in this apartment, for instance, I do get a lot of natural light from this side of the apartment, but it doesn't always filter into the kitchen. So my light sources in the kitchen, I like to have them on at a low level during the day in that sort of cooler 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin range, especially in the coves, because that cove lighting is not visible to me, and it just adds this nice cast of sort of blue-gray light over the ceiling that mimics what I'm seeing outside. When it comes to the evening, though, I shift those colors back to a warm white setting, and that gives me that warmer, cozier, more inviting look that I like for the evening. I like this option. I'm also a big lighting nerd, so I don't mind opening an app and playing around with lighting settings on my phone. Some people are not necessarily up for that, and a static CCT option is going to be a more consistent, better choice for you in your home. I'm not here to tell you either one is better. I, for one, happen to like some dynamic lighting in my spaces. Doesn't mean that you do, and I totally understand if you want to go with something static. One last tip about tunable white. If you decide to go in this direction, you're still going to want to choose a base lighting temperature for your mornings and your evenings when daylight is not present. And I say that because that's still how you're going to choose other finishes, paint colors, countertops, other things, right? The benefit, though, of tunable is, let's say a given wood grain you choose or a given fabric or paint color you choose it looks good under 2700K, looks pretty good under 3000K, but really when you get it to that 2900 Kelvin, it looks perfect. There's no reason why you couldn't dial that in with a tunable white system and get the exact color temperature you want. And that's pretty cool. You can lock that in as a scene and do it over and over again. So tunable white sources are something to look into as you design your home, especially if you're trying to future-proof it. I hope this video demystified color temperature for you a little bit and helps you choose the color temperatures for your home. To sum up, warmer CCTs like 2700 and 3000 Kelvin are going to be the most common choices for interiors of homes. They tend to make people feel the most invited. They are warmer, they're cozier. That said, there are no rules, and the way you see light and color is the way you see it. And if you prefer cooler color temperatures, who am I to tell you otherwise? Go for it. If you're trying to assess the light source, or you're trying to figure out which color temperature is your favorite, my recommendation is to invest a few dollars, either go online or go to your local big box place, pick out the cheapest light bulbs you can find of different CCTs. Don't really assess them for anything else, dimming or other color quality, other things. Just look at them for the color temperature. 2700K, 3000K, 5000 Kelvin. Light them up, hold them up against some of the common finishes in your home, and see what you think. If something is going to speak to you, and when it does, that's going to tell you what color temperature you like. If you're working on a renovation, now you're armed with, I like warmer, I like cooler. Don't just say warm or cool, because it leaves too many things to chance with the contractor, interior designer, architect, whoever's choosing the lighting for you. Tell them, I enjoy 2700 Kelvin. I enjoy 3000 Kelvin. I enjoy 5000 Kelvin. Tell them that at the outset. Something to be aware of, though. Decorative light sources with integral LED generally run warmer. It is hard to find decorative light sources that are not in 2700 or 3000 Kelvin. This gets back to that jarring effect we talked about. 5000 Kelvin in your downlights and 2700 Kelvin in your chandelier or pendant or sconces or whatever is going to be jarring. So my recommendation, trend warmer generally in residential lighting. It matches, it feels cozy, it feels warm. But again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. You can make it happen with light bulbs and your choices on your own. I hope this demystified things for you. If this was helpful, if lighting tips in general are helpful for you, hit that like and subscribe button. If you have questions about color temperature and want to ask me something specific, leave a comment below. I'll get back to you as fast as I can. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.